Turul's world had turned upside down. Suspended by chains, his body held in a cruel inversion, he was a prisoner, in the most humiliating way imaginable. The dungeon was a place of darkness and despair. But for him, it was a hell that not even his wildest nightmares could have conjured. His legs were splayed wide, held in place by a remorseless metal spreader. Every muscle in his body screamed in agony as it fought against the restraints. His superbly chiseled body, once a symbol of strength and freedom, now lay bound, a grotesque parody of his former self. The muscles that had once led him to victory in countless battles, now quivered in helpless rage. Blood rushed to his head, and the world seemed to swim before his eyes. Thoughts were a jumble, a chaotic mix of anger, defiance, pain, and a gnawing sense of failure. He had led his people to the brink of freedom, only to be ensnared in this trap. Had he failed them? Was this the end of their dream? The physical torment was intense, but the emotional pain, indeed, tormented the muscular captive. The knowledge that his followers, those who had believed in him, were back in captivity, was a wound that cut deeper than any blade. He could bear his own suffering, but the thought of their despair was almost too much to endure. Then, through the fog of pain and confusion, he heard it, a whisper, a name, his name.
Turul.
The sound was faint, carried on a breath of air, through the dungeon's damp corridors. But it reached him, clear and undeniable. The revelation that his followers were nearby, aware of his plight, sent a jolt through the captured warrior's soul. Was this recognition a glimmer of hope, or just another cruel twist in his grim fate? He couldn't discern. The sound of his name, echoing through the dungeon, became a haunting refrain, intertwining with his chaotic thoughts, and leaving him suspended between hope and despair. His thoughts were a blend of memories and plans, a desperate attempt to make sense of his situation and find a way out. He thought of his comrades, their faces filled with hope and trust, the dreams they had shared, and the battles they had fought together. And then, without warning, his thoughts were shattered. The dungeon's heavy doors groaned open, and a chill wind swept through the room. Turul's body tensed, his instincts screaming a warning. He knew that sound, that feeling. He knew who had come. His heart pounded hard, as he strained to see. But his position, and the restraints, made it impossible. He could only listen, his mind racing, as the footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. The whispers and murmurs of the other prisoners fell silent, replaced by a heavy, suffocating stillness. Rossz had arrived. And Turul knew this was no ordinary visit. King Rossz arrived at the dungeon with an entourage of personal guards, each one more menacing than the last. The air seemed to chill as he stepped through the threshold, his presence bringing an oppressive weight. The contrast between Rossz and the helpless figure of Turul in the center was immediate and striking. Turul's body, still a symbol of defiance, even in its restrained state, was a stark juxtaposition to Rossz's regal bearing. Where the prisoner's muscles were tense, the king's body was relaxed, almost languid in its confidence. Where the hero's face was a mask of pain and determination, the villain's was a picture of cruel satisfaction. The warden, a grim figure, led the king to the chair they had prepared. It was an ornate piece, as out of place in the dungeon as Rossz himself. As he was seated, the tyrant's eyes never left the muscular figure in the center, a prize he had long sought. This was not the first time Rossz had seen Turul in such a vulnerable state. He had met him once before, in his private dungeon, a memory that brought a twisted smile to his lips. But this time was different. Last time, the king's thoughts had been intimate and predatory. He had wanted to toy with his captive, to relish the pleasure of the young rebel's capture and defiance, savoring each whimper and flash of pain in his prisoner's eyes. It had been a personal indulgence, a game played behind closed doors. But now, the game had changed. It was no longer a hidden pleasure, but a spectacle, a public assertion of dominance. Rossz's authority as king radiated through the dungeon, not just to his guards and wardens, but to all the prisoners. Turul's followers, the very people he had once inspired, now witnessed his utter helplessness. It was a display meant to quash any lingering hopes of rebellion, and Rossz reveled in his power. Rossz's mind was filled with thoughts of domination and control. The contrast between this encounter and their previous meeting was palpable. Where once there had been intimacy, even a perverse kind of respect, now there was only cold calculation. His enjoyment was no longer in the act itself, but in the message it sent. Turul's body, once a beacon of hope, was now a prop in Rossz's theater of cruelty. The king's eyes sparkled with malice, his mind whirring with plans and schemes. The game had changed, but the players were the same. The oppressor knew that he had won. The rebellion was broken, the hope shattered, The hero vanquished. The tyrant leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Turul, and spoke to the warden, his voice dripping with authority and disdain. The instructions were clear, the intent unmistakable. This was a show, a performance, and every detail had to be perfect.